We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to take the opportunity on behalf of the board to welcome everybody to the, March 13th Forward Pinellas meeting. It's good to see a few of you here and look forward to hearing from some of you today. Commissioner Sofer, will you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
Would you please pray with me? Our Heavenly Father, we seek blessings on the task before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We pray that our work today will find in your favor of your sight. With this we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Sofer. Appreciate that. Okay, we have a chance to hear from anybody that would like to address the board on items that aren't on the agenda. Can you not hear me? Better? No? All right, well, Pete, I'm being told that they can't hear. I'm getting another person saying they can't hear, so I'm not sure what we can do to get the noise up a little bit.
Talk to Pete.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Hello, hello. Oh, thank you, Pete. I think he instantaneously fixed that. So, all right, great. Now you're going to, now we're going to actually, all right. So nobody from the public that would like to speak. All right. And we'll start down with Commissioner Long. If we'll do an introduction, please.
Hello, everyone. Oh.
So I say, Pete has delivered.
I am Janet Long, County Commissioner. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Brandy Gabbard, City of St. Pete Council.
Karen Steele, Pinellas County Commission.
Ken Welch, Pinellas County Commission.
Darden Rice, City of St. Pete Council.
Dave Eggers, Pinellas County Commission.
Whit Blanton, Executive Director for Pinellas.
Cookie Kennedy, representing the beach communities, Mayor of City of Indian Rocks Beach.
Michael Smith, Commissioner, City of Largo.
Susie Sofer, Commissioner of the City of Bel Air Bluffs.
Julie Ward-Bajowski, Commissioner and Mayor of the great city of Dunedin.
Well, good to have everybody here today. I see the mayor from Oldsmar is in the house.
That's Mayor.
Well, no, he's still mayor, technically.
Got shorts on.
Even though
He's retired.
There was an election yesterday. He's a short timer. Welcome. All right. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. We have 4 items on there. Approval of the February 13th minutes. Approval of committee appointments. The Forward Pinellas Annual Report, the 2018. Authorization for distribution. And approval of the Title VI Plan Update.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second. Okay. Anybody have anything they want to address, talk about on those issues? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're going to go down to our public hearings, and the first item will be a MPO, a proposed amendment. What?
We have Chelsea Favreau here to cover this item.
Hey, Chelsea.
So this is a procedural amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. Last month, this board set a series of targets for safety measures, including average annual fatalities, serious injuries.
Excuse him.
Mayor.
I'm
one of those.
Excuse me, Chelsea.
Rates, you're right, and serious injury rates. So once those were adopted, we are required by law to now incorporate them into the Transportation Improvement Program. So this amendment right here, you'll see in your packet the strike through underline. This is the language that we are amending to incorporate those targets.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? And this is a public hearing, right? So is there anybody who would like to comment on this? Public? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve was, who was it? Cookie.
Mayor.
And the second was?
Second.
Commissioner Long. And we need a roll call, correct?
Mayor Bajowski.
Aye.
Commissioner Sofer.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilmember Rice.
Aye.
Commissioner Welch.
Aye.
Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Councilmember Gabbard.
Aye.
Commissioner Long.
Aye.
Aye, and the ayes have it. Good to.
7-2 this time. We're winning bigger.
Not that anybody's keeping track.
Yeah, I am.
All right, we do have a couple of Pinellas Planning Council, one sub-threshold and one regular amendment, and I've just got to read the procedures real quick, and we'll jump right into those. We'll hear the sub-threshold land case first. I will ask that before Pinellas staff present the item, then any of the applicant local governments desiring to do so may address their items. If necessary, we'll call upon a representative of PAC. Once these reports are given, I will ask for the proponents and then opponents and any other citizens who wish to be heard. We'll then hear any rebuttals that are necessary and then bring it back here for questions and close the public hearing. The board will deliberate and take action, and we'll do sub-threshold first and move into the threshold after that. Mr. Blanton.
Okay, I'm going to invite Rodney Chapman up here or actually Jared Austin is going to give a presentation today. Cover these items. Welcome, Jared.
Hi, Jared. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Jared Austin, Ford Pinellas. I'll be going over a sub-threshold countywide plan map amendment, case CW 1905, submitted by Pinellas County. So Pinellas County is seeking to amend the property from residential low medium to retail and services. The purpose of the amendment is to correct an inconsistency between local zoning and land use. The location is at 1408 North Betty Lane, and the area size is roughly 0.4 acres. The current existing uses are that of an automobile repair facility, and the surrounding uses are commercial, residential, and preservation. So what you're looking at here is just east to the subject property. You can see a commercial and retail strip. Just north of the property, again, you can see some commercial and residential uses. Just to highlight that further, this is northwest of the property, some of the residential that's located in the area. So the current category is residential low-medium. And as you can see on our permitted uses, we do allow for commercial and retail uses. However, the local land use that falls under the residential low-medium category does not allow for automobile repair facilities. Hence the amendment to change that to retail and services, which would support the automobile repair facility that's currently there. And this proposed amendment, we believe, is appropriate for the intended purpose and is consistent with the locational characteristics for the retail and services category. And on balance, we believe it can be concluded that the proposed amendment is consistent with the relevant countywide considerations contained in Section 6531 of the countywide rules. Therefore, staff is recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Jared? Okay, thank you. We're good on that. So any proponents on this item want to speak? There you go.
Got one?
Jared, let him come forward. Hey.
Thanks, Gary.
Hi, Hoosh.
Good afternoon. My name is Hoosh Gavahi. I'm with Northside Engineering, located in Clearwater, 300 South Belcher Road, and we have presented this project to the staff. Just one point of clarification. When I was reading the description here, it had mentioned that basically the preservation is not a part of amendment, land use amendment, and when I look beyond the other page, then it says if we submit a survey for wetland that can be adjusted. We have prepared a survey of the wetlands, and the preservation line is a lot more into the creek, further back from the building as it was designated on your map. You know, years ago, they established these preservation lines based on just guesstimates. It was not really done technically speaking. So I just want to get a point of clarification that if the staff would like to work with us to include that portion of the land that is not really preservation, yet it's shown as preservation on any land use, can be done just through staff and not have to come back before this board.
That's a good question. Do we know?
Maybe Rodney, you want to address that one?
Rodney, good afternoon. Rodney Chapman, Planning Manager for Pinellas. The countywide rules have a remedy in this situation. It's called a administrative map adjustment, and so we periodically, from time to time, have these situations occur, and the applicant works with the local government to submit environmental documentation for the true location of the jurisdictional wetland line, for example, and then we go ahead and make an administrative adjustment to the map based on that submittal. So we can handle that through an
Wonderful
administrative process.
Just wanted to clarify with this board.
You won't have to come back to us. Is that
Wonderful.
what you're-
I'd love to be here, but
I understand.
thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mitch. Anybody else? Any other proponents? Any opponents? Okay. Make sure anybody else? Any other citizens? Okay. All right. Any questions? Any additional questions? All right. All right. Do we need to take action on this?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Up.
Gabbard.
We'll try to slow that down a little bit. Sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll go to the second one.
Alrighty, going to regular countywide plan map amendment, case CW 1906, submitted by the City of St. Pete Beach. The City of St. Pete Beach is seeking to amend the property from public semi-public to residential medium. The purpose of this amendment is to allow for redevelopment from previously a school to a multifamily residential. The location is on 3101 Pasadena Way, and the area size is roughly 0.32 acres. The current use is vacant, however, it was previously a private school, and the surrounding uses are residential. So this is just north of the subject property, a commercial condominium, a residential condominium, sorry. To the west of the subject property, again, more residential, and then just south of the subject property, also residential. So the current category is public semi-public. And you can see under permitted uses, under public semi-public, we do allow for residential. However, the local institutional land use and zoning that falls under our public semi-public category does not allow for the redevelopment of this property to residential. Hence the land use amendment to change this to residential medium, which would support that redevelopment. As part of 7 of our countywide considerations, one of the things that we do take into consideration is the coastal high hazard area. This proposed amendment location is within a coastal high hazard area. However, the prospective land use change would result in a de minimis increase in residential population. And in addition, St. Pete Beach staff has indicated that should the property redevelop into any multifamily dwelling, the applicant would need to demonstrate compliance with the city evacuation provisions, as well as demonstrate at the time of permitting that existing infrastructure meets the capacity needs of any planned redevelopment. With that, we believe the proposed amendment is appropriate for the intended purpose and is consistent with the locational characteristics of the residential medium category. And on balance, we believe it can be concluded that the proposed amendment is consistent with the relevant countywide considerations contained in Section 6531 of the countywide rules. And just for further clarification, here are the 7 countywide considerations that were used for this land use case.
Okay, any questions for Jarrett? Okay, are there any proponents that would like to speak to this? Any opponents or any residents that would like to speak to this item? Not seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. No additional questions? Do I have a motion, please?
Make the motion.
Second.
Did you get that? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to presentations, and we'll go to Commissioner Long to talk about PSTA activities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as most of you, I think, know, PSTA has continued to do some very strategic thinking and strategizing with regard to the fact that we are capped at our millage rate, and we are considering a lot of different ways in which to help facilitate us moving forward so that we don't have to cut services in June. With that said, we are also working in collaboration with WIT at Forward Pinellas and Barry Burton to ensure that we are coming up with a strategy that really meets the needs of the entire community. So stay tuned for that as we move forward to work on our funding solutions for transportation, both for the county and PSTA and for our regional partners as well. I do want to share some really good news with you that PSTA has won 3 first-place awards from the American Public Transportation Association for our marketing efforts in 3 different categories. Best marketing and communication to increase ridership or sales for our 2018 spring break partnership with the City of Clearwater. The second one was for best marketing and communications educational effort for our Appy Hour event promoting our new real-time transit app at Green Bench Brewing in downtown St. Pete. And best marketing and communications to highlight transit needs funding on a shoestring for the TRAC Superior Transit Access Recognition Award, which identifies good design and access to and from bus stops. So we're pretty proud of that, and we're delighted that they have come up with a shoestring category, as that would define most of the projects that we are working on currently. So we do have some pretty serious service adjustments that are on the horizon, and we're doing some very fine-tuning adjustment analysis of those services to better position us to provide good service for our citizens. So please stay tuned. There's a lot of discussion coming forward very shortly on all of these subjects. And so if you have any great new thoughts for us, please feel free to weigh in. One of the things that we have struggled with a long time, and I think Forward Pinellas is aware of it, is the fact that we have 7 jurisdictions within our county that do not participate in PSTA ad valorem taxes, yet our buses and our bus service go right through those communities. And so the resolution that prohibited those areas from participating ended many, many years ago, more than a decade ago, and it's time for us to revisit those 7 communities, and I look forward to robust conversation going forward about how we move beyond that. We also have had the opportunity to purchase 2 more electric buses that are partially funded by a FTA low, no emission vehicle competitive grant of $1 million. And we always love when we get those grants from the federal government because, as a lot of you know, we have worked really, really hard and are further into that very lengthy process at the federal government for receiving transportation dollars. And we are poised both at PSTA and at TBARTA to receive additional dollars in the not too far distant future. With the two new electric vehicles, we have been able to lower the cost to the agency on these purchases, which surpasses what we would have to pay if we were buying diesel. We also save money on the operations and maintenance of these vehicles compared to diesel because of the battery life projects on those vehicles, and we're able to keep them in service much longer than the 12-year life expectancy of a diesel vehicle, and we've got a great partnership going to make that all possible with Duke Energy, so we're grateful for that partnership as well. Our next board meeting is March 27th at 9 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that comprehensive report. Yes, a couple of questions, I think, Commissioner.
I thought there were only 5 communities that weren't paying the tax.
There are 5 municipalities, but then there's also Tierra Verde and parts of, I believe the 7th one is Lealman.
There's a fire district.
The fire district, that's right. Yeah.
So how much would that add up to? It would be more than the $4.1 billion.
It's about $5 million.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay.
Garden, did I get that right?
I believe so.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Welch.
Well, that was my question. Good luck with that. Although,
Now who's
remember your Lent. Remember Lent. So, totally supportive of that effort, and I understand there is, which was new information to me, a procedure for that to happen outside of each of those municipalities voting.
Correct.
Okay, and I wasn't aware of that option. So
That I thought we had shared that information with you, and if we did
we
not,
did.
okay.
That's when I became aware of it. The second
That
option.
requires a conversation with my colleagues on the
It
county
does.
commission.
It does. So that
Yes, sir. Thank you for bringing that up.
that's helpful.
What is it? What is the option?
Well, there's an option. Historically, my understanding was that each of the 5 cities would have to vote
Right.
to tax themselves. There is a second option which does not require that.
My limited understanding, but I do have a little bit, is that there's a 2-step process that would require all the members of the authority to basically vote to have the non-members participate in the authority, and then there would be a second vote to bring them in. But it would have to be authorized by the Board of County Commissioners.
And we haven't had that conversation yet.
That's something that is really deep into the legal weeds of things. So,
It is, and it would require an expansion of the PSTA
Right.
district,
Right.
which would cover the whole entire county.
For the entire county, correct.
Well, PSTA serves the entire county.
Absolutely,
and some of our
we do.
Premium service is going to some of the areas that don't
Thank
pay
you.
right now.
And just keep in mind that PSTA does get grants to operate some service from those cities. So there is a reimbursable, and that's why the total amount would be reduced a little bit.
Right, because some of them are reimbursed.
That's right.
But not at $4.5 million.
Correct.
Okay. So, my question that I was going to ask is on the electric buses. You guys know
Have you ridden one yet?
Of course I did.
Isn't it fabulous? There's no sound
Absolutely.
at all. You can't.
Which can be a problem.
Well,
You can't hear the buses coming up, so we need to work on that.
A little bell or something.
Question, as you know, we help from the county level with the charger for the original buses. What routes are these new buses running on? And
They're running
How'd you handle
they're
this?
running in a little loop around downtown St. Pete right now.
so they're all running on the original route, so you don't need another charger yet.
Not yet, but
Okay.
we will.
And
Stay tuned.
And I think that's going to go near PSTA,
Yes.
the location there at the offices, where that new charging station is going to go. Yeah. No, at the actual headquarters, PSTA headquarters.
We,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
it's my understanding we do not need the en route charger near USF St. Pete because we're pleasantly surprised that we can get more mileage out of the charge bus by charging it at the PSTA headquarters.
That's great. So there won't be a charger in downtown. It'll be at headquarters.
That's the last I heard.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yes, Cassandra.
Cassandra's shaking her head, so we got it right.
Okay. Any other questions for Commissioner Long?
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Seal, you want to give us an update on T-BARDA, please?
Yes, indeed. At the last meeting on February 22nd, we gave an award to WSP USA and Valoran Group to not to exceed cumulatively $3 million to allow access for architectural engineering, planning, operational efficiency, and marketing services. The next was we gave approval for a contract with FKQ Advertising to redesign the T-BARDA website at a cost not to exceed $60,000. And finally, and most importantly, we had 3 top-ranked firms of 6 who presented a federal lobbyist presentation. And those final candidates were Ballard Partners, Chambers, Conlon, and Hartwell, and Van Scoyoc. Van Scoyoc had offered a best and final offer. It was decided at that board meeting that all 3 firms should be allowed to give a best and final offer, and that will be done at the April board meeting. We canceled the March board meeting due to lack of quorum, so it'll be decided in April.
Okay. Any questions for?
First time I've had that happen in a long time, where we had the
Wow,
lobbyists come present.
that's cool.
It's interesting.
Any questions? Nope. Okay, Chelsea, ready for an update on Advantage Pinellas?
Just kind of want to update you on where we are with the development of the Advantage Pinellas Plan. We're just right now finalizing our population employment projections. The map that you see on the screen, it's a heat map. The darker the color, the higher the number of people that we added to that. They're called traffic analysis zones, those little subsections of the county. So we had about a 9.9% increase, so just under 100,000 people that we had to allocate throughout the county between now and 2045. When we looked at where those people were kind of concentrated, almost 30% of them are going to be located in the activity centers, we believe. So you'll see the concentrations in the downtown St. Petersburg area, in the middle of Pinellas Park, some pockets around Clearwater where they've done a lot of planning at US 19 in Gulf to Bay area, also US 19 in Countryside, and then throughout up Safety Harbor and into Oldsmar. This map right here shows the employment projections. Again, the darker the color, the higher the number of employees. We're looking to add about 60,000 employees to Pinellas County between now and 2045. It's about an 11% increase. When we looked at it with activity centers, we realized about 13% of those are going to be located in activity centers. Then we took another look and realized we had missed our target employment centers when we did that number. So the number is actually closer to 50% of our employees we believe are going to be located in activity centers and those target employment areas, which are going to be your downtown areas, Oldsmar, Gateway, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, and the like. And you'll see from the population to the employment map, our employment is much more heavily concentrated in those target employment areas throughout Pinellas County. We are currently working on our needs assessment, and that's where we identify those projects that we believe are needed for mobility throughout Pinellas County. We're starting to put some lines in a map to look at projects, both roadway and transit projects throughout Pinellas County and the region. And we're refining the identification of priority transit corridors, areas that we'd like to see additional transit service above and beyond just the local bus. And we always get questions about how we're dealing with automated and connected vehicles. You hear all the time that automated vehicles are going to result in some travel time savings, but as you can see from this photo, it still takes up the same amount of roadway space. However, we do know that because these vehicles can platoon, they can drive more closely together, we believe that there will be some kind of savings from the transportation network because of this. FDOT Central Office did provide us with some guidance, so some options that we could look at is how much more capacity may be available. So working with the other MPOs in the region, we're going to be testing a variety of scenarios. Say we have an additional 75% capacity on the highway system because of these. What will that look like in 2045? But also backing down from that, we'll have kind of a mid-range, maybe 30%, following that DOT guidance, and also we'll look at a zero increase in the transportation network. We'll look at the impacts of that, and then we'll make a decision on what analysis we should be including with the final long-range plan when we do adopt it. It's going crazy. We have been doing a lot of public outreach. We're still attending public events throughout Pinellas County. We've been doing a lot of targeted presentations, and we've been getting a lot more interest and requests to present to community groups. And we are working right now on another online engagement strategy to get more feedback on the projects that we're going to be putting in the ultimate long-range plan, because we want to make sure that the projects that we're advancing for funding are those that have a lot of support from the public. We do have our second of 3 focus groups coming up on April 11th. We'll be looking at prioritizing our projects from that needs assessment, getting feedback on various components of projects, what people want to see, what they don't want to see. Do they prefer wide sidewalks or bicycle lanes, and where do they kind of want those treatments? And again, that'll help inform the scale and the scope of the projects that we put in the ultimate plan. So coming soon, we'll be bringing you that needs plan and that list of projects as we finalize it and bring it forward. And then we will be aligning those projects with the revenues that we believe we'll have available between now and 2045 to develop that ultimate cost feasible plan. And with that, I'll take any questions.
And I just want to clarify that those are 2 documents that we're going to be asking you to vote on, voting for a needs plan with whatever modifications you think is needed, and on the priorities for the financial resources that we have available through 2045. And I just want to clarify, I think you implied this, but the needs plan is being developed in close participation with our partners. So not just PSTA because of the Advantage Pinellas plan, but the county, the cities, our regional partners as well. So I think it's been a good cooperative effort.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Hi, thank you, Chelsea. So going back to the first slide, the new population forecast is adjusted higher than numbers we've been going with previously. I think previously we were looking like at a 7% growth for Pinellas, which was, I think, 60,000 people. So what is to account for the increase? Are we successful in creating higher areas of density along the activity centers?
Yes, and what we saw with the last plan is we faced the growth between 2010 and 2040, and we surpassed our 2015 projections exponentially. So we knew that our 2040 numbers were on the low side. And with the changes to the countywide land use plan and additional densities and intensities along those transit corridors and activity centers, we believe that there's the ability to absorb that growth in those areas.
And out of curiosity, do you think Hillsborough and Pasco will see their numbers go up as well?
Pasco, their numbers are still high. They're not as high as they projected last time, but Pasco County is looking at, give me 1 second, 64% increase in their total population between now and 2045, and Hillsborough County is projecting a 55% increase. So region-wide, we're looking at a total of about 4 million people by 2045.
Which is not a lot smaller than, say, the Dallas Metroplex, which is about 6 million, but it's a lot bigger geographically, too. And I think Pasco, if I remember right, was about 850,000 total population.
About 800,000. They're currently at about 480.
Yeah. Wow. So by 2045, they'll
They're
be
all
almost
bringing
as big.
cars.
Yes.
And no water.
Commissioner Sofer, and then Commissioner.
Thank you, Chelsea, for your presentation. May I ask who makes up of the focus group?
We did the statistically valid survey of the public last year, and from that list of people, we inquired, would you be interested in participating in a focus group? And I believe we had about 400 people say yes. So we divided the group up by the region, north, mid, and south, and then we tried to make sure we were selecting kind of representative sample, age, demographic background, and strategically reached out to people, and we got about 20 people that were interested. We had, I believe, 20 at the first focus group. We're hoping to get that same exact group back for the second one.
Yeah, the idea is there are going to be some continuity of people to bring them aboard. They gave us a lot of good thoughts about issues to look at. Next thing was, here's the needs plan that we're thinking of. What's your feedback on that? And I was really impressed that we did have such a diverse group. It was not what I expected. I mean, we really did seem to drill down, and we had people who drove all the way up from South County and all the way down from way north in Tarpon Springs to come to our meeting in Clearwater.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Commissioner Long?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure, Chelsea, if you're the right person to answer this question, but this map that you're showing with regard to the spine, I guess, of a plan for Pinellas County, does that incorporate the same information that goes to the Gateway Intermodal Center that we talked about at our executive meeting with? And in particular, how does that correlate with what the partnership has done?
Let me get the map up on the screen because I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about.
Well, back
is
a
it
few slides
that map?
before that.
Yeah, so the way we're looking at the transit network is if you're speaking of the regional transit feasibility plan, that 41-mile bus rapid transit line, that's absolutely something that we would consider a central element of our needs network. And because the Florida Department of Transportation is completing the Intermodal Center feasibility study for the Gateway area, we don't have a site nailed down yet, but we've got a short list of sites. That'll be folded into the Gateway Area Master Plan presentation recommendations that you'll receive maybe in May. So that's all kind of coming together at the same time. Now, as far as the partnership goes, my understanding is that they have done a separate set of principles, renderings for transit-oriented development at selected intermodal center opportunity sites. And I have not seen that presentation. They have not coordinated with us. But that is something that they've done, I think, to maybe tamp down some of the criticism coming from Hillsborough County about the nature of what this transit service will be.
Well, I guess my reason for bringing it up is that because we've all worked so hard to be on the same page, to have one voice with one message and everybody speaking the same language as we move forward to solve these huge transportation issues, not only in our county, but going from here over to Hillsborough is a nightmare. And it concerns me when all these different groups are working on a plan and taking precious resources to duplicate efforts that are already being done.
I'm concerned about that too, and I don't want any mixed messages out there in the public realm speaking to different audiences, showing different plans. So
It's confusing enough when you try to, put a plan together. So now when you have multiple organizations coming up with their own ideas, it's I don't know how we get that all to come together, but it's problematic at best.
And if I could help maybe clarify a little bit. So as I mentioned, the needs plan is being developed in a true collaborative partnership way, little p. And, we feel that we're all working together. And even though there are some disagreements between the counties, I think there are a lot of things we can agree on. And the T-BARTA agency will be conducting or leading a PD&E study of this 41-mile corridor to refine it, to make whatever adjustments may be needed in that operating plan, and that'll reflect the latest information that we're feeding them on the Gateway Area Master Plan, for instance, the Intermodal Center. That's going to take about 2 years. It will, and that's just the process. There's $5 million that have been allocated for that project. That will deliver, at the end of it, some kind of recommendation for advancing that project through federal and state funding. And I suspect at that time there'll also be a need for a commitment of local funds to operate and maintain that service. That conversation's still a long way from being complete. But I just wanted to give everybody a sense of that timeline. So we hope it gets done a lot faster, but the reality is a 2-year time frame to define that project better. And then from there, it'll be a matter of how quickly the funds can flow through the system.
Well, it's distressing. I don't mean to belabor it, but it is distressing to hear you say that it's 2 years before we can make any positive movement forward, because it's such a nightmare right now.
Yes.
I can't even imagine what 2 years.
So what we're going to be presenting in the interim is potentially an interim express bus transit plan that can be implemented much faster with less capital needs. So PSTA has its pilot bus on shoulder project for I-275. We're also looking at express bus into Tampa, and that's something where we need to have a local match in order for PSTA to take down those DOT grants that are available. So that's really an action that could happen fairly quickly, and we don't have to wait 2 years on that. So it's a matter of phasing in the nature of the project, and we expect it to evolve over time.
But your point, I think, is well taken. That
Thank you.
as far as the government and business sectors need to be working a lot closer, and I think we've talked about it in other areas.
Exactly.
And then to bring not only a better plan, but to bring a more credible plan for our residents to get excited about. When you have government and business on the same page, it really makes people feel more.
Get things done.
Yeah, you get things done and people get more excited about
And
it.
one more thing that Whit reminded me that I neglected to say about the PSTA report. We're working really hard to rebrand the way in which we talk about this new service, when you talk about the express route, et cetera, and more to RTS, which is Rapid Transit Service. It just connotes in your mind kind of a different thing than a clunky, fat bus.
Don't say clunky
A sleek,
streamlined,
rapid, yes,
sleek, beautiful,
futuristic,
yeah,
beautiful.
Transportation of the future.
Yes, that. Okay.
All right. Any other? Chelsea, any other questions for Chelsea? Okay. Thank you.
I think she's got the next item too.
Okay.
All right, no PowerPoint for this one. So I'm here to talk about the Complete Streets program. As you're aware, we are now in our third year of funding. We make available up to $100,000 for a concept planning project, and then we prioritize a construction project for up to $1 million in funding for that. We had a subcommittee of both the TCC and the PAC come together and some Ford Pinellas staff to review the applications and make a recommendation. For the concept planning projects, the committee recommended that we fund the City of Clearwater project for Fort Harrison Avenue between Bel Air Road and up to the Alt 19 merge. The City of Clearwater requested $50,000 to do that project. The main rationale behind that was the redevelopment potential along the corridor, the fact that the corridor linked three major activity centers, the hospital, the downtown, and then I believe it's the North Marina District, and then the underserved populations in the area. The subcommittee had further conversation that since there was already $100,000 in the budget, they felt that they would like to at least offer that to the City of St. Petersburg to see if that city could then do a concept plan for the 18th Avenue South with the reduced funding and possibly make it up with either in-kind or additional local funds. We had a conversation with city staff, and they did indicate that they would be willing to accept the $50,000. So the ultimate recommendation was to offer $50,000 to both of those local governments. Do we want to stop and have any questions on that one?
Yeah, the idea was that we took the total funds available and split it.
Correct.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Any questions on that first part? Okay, go ahead. Oh, did you have?
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
For the construction projects, we received the two applications, one from the City of Dunedin for Skinner Boulevard, and the other was from the City of St. Petersburg for 22nd Street South, from 5th Avenue South to 11th Avenue South. On this point, the subcommittee had a lot of very back and forth conversation, but ultimately the criteria in the application, it points on both redevelopment potential of the corridor and also transportation disadvantaged, low income, and minority populations. And while both of the applications had very strong redevelopment potential in the area surrounding the corridor, the subcommittee felt that the low-income, minority, and transportation disadvantaged populations were much higher in the St. Petersburg area, and that kind of swung them over to recommend that the City of St. Petersburg application be funded this year. So with that, I'll take any questions.
So in that case, there was no sense of splitting that one up because there was a lot of good things coming in the Skinner Boulevard project, but there was no interest in parsing it out a little bit.
That was mentioned briefly by the subcommittee, but ultimately it was felt that $1 million in a construction project doesn't go very far, and there was some concern that only $500,000 would not enable either one of the communities to finish the project.
Okay. Any questions on this part? Okay.
I have a question for St. Pete staff if they're here.
Mm-hmm.
It might be in the room.
We have Tom.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing?
Good.
So this is from 22nd Street from 1st Avenue to 15th.
It's a little bit south of that. It's the southern section, 22nd Street. Do you have exact limitations?
It's 5th Avenue South to, I believe, 11th Avenue South. It starts right where the Pinellas Trail crossing is.
Okay, we're talking the construction application, right?
Yes.
Correct.
And this says 22nd Street from 15th Avenue South to 1st Avenue South in the background materials.
Oh, sorry, there might
Shouldn't
be a
say
typo.
that. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to be sure the section we're talking about.
Mm.
So give it to me again. What? It's not 22nd Street between 15th Avenue South and 1st Avenue?
No, it's
Okay.
south of that.
Yeah, it starts about 5th Avenue South and then goes south from there.
And that was my question. How far south does it go?
I believe the project limits go all the way down to 15th, but the city had talked about maybe stopping at 11th and doing some phasing.
Okay.
Once they fully scope the project, they'll have a better idea of what the ultimate end limit will be.
Okay. So my question might not be relevant until I find exactly where it is.
We have 5th Avenue South to 11th Avenue South in the write-up.
Mm-hmm.
That's through the Deuces neighborhood.
Okay, the write-up I'm looking at, Darden, am I reading this
Yeah,
correctly?
it does say 15th Avenue South to 1st Avenue South in our backup.
on 22nd Street?
22nd.
Yeah,
So
I
we're
understood 5th Avenue South to 11th Avenue South, and that's the subcommittee report that I'm looking at.
We'll double check that though.
Okay. And ultimately, my question is, why doesn't it go down to 18th the city's view? Is that a different plan?
Yeah, we just want to focus on that segment. It's includes the trail
That
area.
segment being 5th to 11th, we think.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the trail area, and we're talking about more parking and bike lanes and pedestrian amenities. So
Okay.
it's a good focus area. It's $1 million. We have to put it to good use and accomplish what we can in that area. So we had to pick a certain lane segment.
Okay. Can you make sure that I get the actual segment that we're talking about with?
Yeah.
I will, make sure.
Thank you.
We'll confirm that.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. So we need a motion to approve the Complete Streets grant funding, which I assume is the concept planning and the construction. We can do them all at once.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Did you get that? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we think very highly of the Dunedin Skinner project. I want to be real clear about that. And we are hopeful that the city will apply next year for construction funding.
And we will.
Thought you might.
Okay. We are going to, Rodney. See, I look up and there you are. Rodney,
Yes.
Go ahead.
So this is part 2 of our grants program, and Rodney will cover the planning and placemaking grant program.
So this is the second year of the planning and placemaking pilot program, which is in some ways a component, a land use component or complement to the Complete Streets program that typically funds transportation projects. What we're looking for from this program is really local government projects that do their best to implement the planning and urban design principles of the countywide plan. So just like last year, we received 4 applications from our local government partners. We received an application from the City of Largo for a special area plan for the US 19 Roosevelt Boulevard East Bay Drive area. We received another application from the City of Oldsmar for a feasibility study for a business incubator in their downtown area. Received an application from the City of St. Petersburg for an update to their downtown development streetscape standards. And the 4th application was from the City of Tarpon Springs that was trying to do a few things, including developing an economic profile and market analysis for their activity center, as well as identify the highest and best use for a property the city has recently acquired. Just like with the Complete Streets program, we convened a subcommittee of our Planners Advisory Committee and our staff to review the applications. And there's a lot of good discussion about all the applications. The subcommittee was pleased with the diversity and the level of innovation from the projects that were proposed. And after some deliberations, they recommended approval or recommended funding for the City of Largo's request, City of Oldsmar, and the City of Tarpon Springs. The rationale behind that was, in the Largo's case, it is a traditional special area plan. It is a planned activity center on our transit-oriented land use vision map. It is complementary to the Gateway Master Plan in location and impact. The Oldsmar request, as well as the Tarpon Springs request, were seen similar in that they both have existing mature activity centers, but they're not seeing this type of catalytic redevelopment, and so they think that this business incubator could serve as a means to tap into the creative class to help expand entrepreneurship and existing business growth and focus that within the downtown area that would then spin off into other redevelopment opportunities. And although the committee didn't fully fund or recommend fully funding the Tarpon Springs application, they felt the challenges in Tarpon Springs were similar. And we reached out to Tarpon Springs to talk about that remaining $25,000 and would they be able to complete some of the work that they had proposed. And they said yes, they would use the money for that highest and best use analysis for that distressed city-owned piece of property. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Any questions on this grant? Okay. Thank you, Rodney. I need a motion.
We need it. Yeah.
Move approval.
Get that?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Sofer. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Rodney, you're up again.
Okay, this one is an update to our work on the alternate US 19 Cultural Corridor Plan. It's a bit of a new initiative for us for a number of reasons. It does complement what you heard last month from the Department of Transportation in terms of those 2 corridor studies that were presented, and we're looking at the corridor from an engineering analysis, traffic operations, and those sorts of factors. This is looking at the corridor from a much different perspective. It's really trying to focus on existing and potential future arts and cultural assets along the corridor. And what also is unique about this is we have a strong project partner, because we will be honest and admit we're not arts and cultural experts. And so fortunately, we have been working with Creative Pinellas, the designated arts agency for Pinellas County, and they've been key in helping us reach out to these arts and cultural experts to help define what a cultural corridor could be along North US 19. What we're seeing in the genesis really for this project is that quality communities mean more than just buildings and roads. It's a lot of quality of life and experiences and activities and destinations that go into what makes a community unique. And in our planning realm, we're seeing more opportunities where artists and cultural experts and planners are working together to help solve some of the persistent challenges that we see around our community. Livability is key. Sense of place is also something that arts and culture really help define an area, and we're hoping to bring forward those sorts of elements to a higher position in the study area. So when I go around and talk about the cultural corridor, I sometimes get a funny look, just because it can mean a few different things to a few different people. And so essentially there's a few key things that are common to all cultural corridors or districts. Obviously, one being it's a designated area. That area could have a unique ethnic group or cultural element to it. There could be some historical assets there, and it could have a strong cultural identity. On the planning and policy side of things, typically these districts or corridors have strong policies and strategies that support arts and cultural programming. They can be in terms of land use policies, incentives that are focused on arts and culture. There is event programming, as well as some unique partnerships, sometimes between the business community and those the local artists, as well as a strong focus on marketing the community and its assets to the surrounding areas. One of the things that's interesting about this corridor is each of the cities along the study area do have a designated community redevelopment area. And so those areas have been identified as special areas that have the sort of critical or the planned critical mass of density and cultural activities to really make things pop. So why Alt 19? Obviously, those of us that are familiar with the corridor know it has a strong and rich history. There's many cultural assets and activities that take place in this part of North Pinellas County. It's about 17 miles that we have identified from Largo all the way north to the Tarpon Springs area. To be honest, we have had a lot of interest and energy around this initiative. We've spoken to, engaged in about over 150 people and of various backgrounds to help us with the development of this plan. And one of the things that we've heard commonly is the lack of available commercial space for artists, for example. Artists don't make a lot of money, obviously, and their ability to work on their projects as well as provide an affordable place to live is always a challenge. And so a lot of comments were focused on providing that opportunity to have that work-live space. And Alt 19 has some opportunities in certain areas. So what does success look like to us? It's really about a strong identity that's rooted in a compelling vision. And that vision must be respectful of the existing community character that we see around the corridor. But we have to find a way to somehow tie it together through a unified theme. It's not going to be an easy thing to do, but we think we're up for the challenge. And also we want to make sure that we have actionable recommendations and strategies, because it's going to take commitments from a lot of different folks, whether it be those arts and cultural experts, whether it be local governments, our partner agencies, as well as advocacy organizations that exist in the North Pinellas area.
Rodney?
Yes.
I was looking at page 10 when it kind of summarized some common themes in each of the communities.
Yes.
I think at the Tarpon Springs workshop is when we invited the folks from Palm Harbor to that meeting, but I'm not sure, because I thought they were included in one of the workshops, the people along in that area. Do you know?
We've had a broad cross-section of folks from up and down the corridor. Whether we held the meeting in Tarpon Springs or another location, we found that people, whether they were in Tarpon Springs or Palm Harbor or another location, they found their way to the...
I just want to make sure, I mean, you said Tarpon Springs workshop, that it's reflective also of the folks that are living in Palm Harbor.
Yes.
Because
yes.
You mentioned that all of those communities had CRAs. Well, Palm Harbor doesn't.
Yes. I said cities.
I know
CRAs,
you did.
yes.
I'm bringing up this area purposely.
Yes.
And I think that they were included in that conversation. So I just want to make sure that they're not being disenfranchised by.
Commissioner, you're right. Yes, they were included, and also we've had conversations with county planning staff as well, who work in close concert with the downtown Palm Harbor area.
Thank you.
It's also worth just pointing out Ozona is another unincorporated area that has a lot of eclectic aspects to it, and we had representatives from Ozona as well. So I mean, it's really meant. These are, I wouldn't even call these anchors, but they are focal points along the corridor. But Palm Harbor is very much in that category too.
So what we've seen and heard during the first phase of the outreach is, as I mentioned before, we talked to a broad cross-section of folks, both geographically as well as with a professional background, whether it be artists or performers, advocacy organizations, businesses, and community members. We've also gone out and done several site surveys, as well as worked on some mapping through our geographic information systems. We've had interviews with local government staff, as I mentioned before, as well as we're constantly keeping our eye out for new case studies so we can learn what's going on around the country and what's been effective. So these are some of the examples of the feedback and the forms that has come in these public engagement opportunities. So we have done a few different things, but the common theme has been to ask the stakeholders what's working along the corridor, what they think needs improvement, how do we go about making those improvements, and where should we focus our energy? So whether that was in small group interactions or mapping exercises or even using sticky notes. We got, my office is full of these sorts of things. And as Commissioner Eggers mentioned earlier, we do include in the report some common themes that we saw throughout the workshops. So what we've learned so far, and I just tried to highlight about 7 or 8 things there in blue that I think were kind of key findings from that first phase. Again, as I mentioned before, the live workspace for artists was voiced commonly, as well as a little nuance to that is this idea of co-working or an incubator space. There was a lot of conversation about the need for that and how effective it would be to advancing some of these causes. Again, there's a lot of discussion about how each of these communities are unique and that whatever we do, just make sure that it does respect that local identity. But at the same time, wanting to somehow tie all these brands together in some way that makes sense, but still lets people know that they're in a particular area. A lot of discussion about wayfinding and signage and using that as a means to better direct residents and visitors to different destinations and attractions. A lot of people felt strongly about having a more robust and well-defined digital presence, either through websites or apps or other types of media. Also allowing artists to enhance infrastructure. We do see here a lot in downtown Clearwater with the traffic signal control cabinets that have been wrapped in art, and that's been a partnership with the Clearwater Arts Alliance. And so it's really looking at things like that and expanding them both north and south of downtown Clearwater. And then lastly, funding is always going to be a challenge, and so there's a lot of support for us to look at creative ways to fund some of these things. And so we actually through the course of Phase 1, did work with the City of Clearwater and Creative Pinellas to submit an application to the National Endowment for the Arts for a public art installation program centered primarily on downtown Clearwater. We should find out in May if we were successful in that grant application.
Question.
Yes.
On the co-working incubator space, where were you getting a lot of that input from along the corridor? Do you remember?
It was primarily at the Dunedin Workshop and Tarpon Springs.
Okay.
I think those are probably the two where we had a strong presence of folks that actually were artists and did that for a living.
Yeah, I think both of those areas have looked at potentially trying to get some funding for an incubator type space in the past. So I think this is reflective of that too. So thank you.
Add just something, if you may.
Yes.
I don't think you can have a cultural corridor and call it an arts and cultural corridor without some aspect of residential or maker space in that corridor. Ultimately, we can put in all the art installations and paint all the murals and do public art, and that's all fine. But I think if you really want to create an economic advantage and solidify that brand identity, you're going to need artists living in that corridor and having space that's available for the public. And there's some really good examples around the country, and we're just tipping into this in a little ways. But Paducah, Kentucky, which probably needed that impetus, they paid down the rent to where artists can come in and rent space for a year for basically $1. And they have to stay there, and they have to produce art, and they have to have certain hours open for the public. But it's, that kind of an incentive, and maybe that's a revolving program where the artist isn't there permanently, but they're there for a year, and then it's replaced by somebody else. Mm-hmm. And there have been homes that I think St. Pete's even looking at that for the Kerouac home. But homes that have been turned into space for writers to work and produce writing. So a lot of great little models that are out there that we can tap into and see what best fits.
Thank you.
And just some examples of what we've seen along the corridor, what you will find along the corridor, whether it be historic resources, performing arts venues, museums. There are certain pockets of vacant commercial space that could be utilized for display of art or co-working opportunities. Obviously public art, and then key redevelopment projects that are done in a way that helps you reach that critical mass of jobs and population to help the district really be a strong one. So moving into Phase 2, we will have a kickoff meeting on March 26th at 6 p.m. at the Creative Pinellas Gallery. To move into the next phase of the project. Essentially what we'll be doing is to further explore some of these broad themes, and you see 5 of them there, where we want to talk more about building on that existing momentum that we have seen thus far. Again, further dive into this adaptive reuse of vacant floor space for those desired uses. And talk more about strengthening the identity of the corridor, but unifying it at the same time. Work on finding ways to prioritize those most dense and active areas as safe zones for all modes of transportation. And then look at ways to better coordinate events. Some of the conversations that I've had is finding ways to, because each community does have a suite of events that they hold periodically throughout the year, but wouldn't it be a good idea if they were coordinated? Maybe it's a weekend, and so every community along the corridor rolls out their best for that particular weekend, and then you couple that with free transit, for example, by the Jolly Trolley, so people can visit each destination for free, and that would really activate the corridor. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Rodney?
Yes. I love this. I think this is a great opportunity, and I support the arts. But my question is, some of that strip are strip malls and working plazas. How do you get away from that and try to focus more into the arts?
Well, that's a great question, and I think we all understand there is the strip commercial on the corridor, and the redevelopment of those properties is more of a longer-term strategy. But I think for a shorter term, we can look at nodes or areas of concentrated activity. While it may not be the whole 17 miles, there'll be select spots or geographic areas along that 17 miles where you can do a lot of good branding and marketing and event programming and incentives to help bring the corridor together.
What would you do to incentivize those strip malls to change over?
That's a longer conversation because typically there are a lot of market forces at play when it comes to properties redeveloping, and absent direct intervention financially, it's hard for that to happen. So I've seen it be effective where there's a market opportunity that presents itself, and then the organizations and local governments then capitalize on that opportunity.
Okay. The other thing to kind of think about is that we were talking about this the other day, that pedestrians, walkers, are sort of the indicator species of a healthy economy. And, in pockets along this corridor, you've got a lot of walking. You've got a lot of people out on bikes, walking, and that's probably your initial focal point where you brand and solidify that. And then other pieces of this corridor where that's going to take time to take hold will probably evolve later. But, key on the opportunities where people are already, at eye level, they're out in the corridor today, and they're seeing it at a slower pace today than driving by fast, because that's what the strip malls were built for. And then as you get a little momentum going, then that helps influence the market dynamics of redevelopment potential. Even like the redevelopment that's happened along Central Avenue in St. Pete, for instance, has happened largely because there were some initial pioneers, and that created sort of a cascade effect, and it just kept more and more impetus going for further redevelopment. And I think we see that in the Alt-19 corridor in parts. Certainly in Dunedin we're seeing that. So I think, that's just going to have to take hold a little bit. But you're touching on probably the toughest nut to crack in that corridor.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say that, whether it's the trail going north from Dunedin, which very close to the Alt-19, which connects, whether it's those nodes along the way or even the Jolly Trolley that has really gotten people, bouncing up the corridor. So I think all of that kind of connects sightseeing kind of activities and therefore probably the cultural aspects of those communities. So I think it's kind of starting to work that way anyway.
Right. Yeah, I always tell folks, being a St. Pete native, I can remember growing up, and downtown St. Pete was not what it is today. You probably remember as well. But it's taken... takes time. And as long as you have those policies and plans in place and then have those catalytic opportunities that you take advantage of, then over time you will see those changes occur.
So you will be brought up to speed on the exact plans of Phase 2 as we get further into that and what our strategy is. There's been some discussion about Tourist Development Council capital grants that we could pursue. There's been some discussion about state grants, and Rodney mentioned the National Endowment for the Arts. So we're going to pursue what makes most sense in this quarter to create a sense of identity and a sense of cultural attachment.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you, Rodney. Appreciate it. Director's reports.
Okay, thank you. I've got just a few items that I want to highlight. And first, I'm going to preview for you all something to do with our Enhancing Beach Community Access Initiative. I've been mentioning for the last couple of months that we've been working with the City of St. Pete Beach and the Town of Indian Shores and the City of Indian Rocks Beach on various endeavors. I want to talk a little bit about the sidewalk issue and drainage issue that we have in the Town of Indian Shores. We had been working with the Florida Department of Transportation to look at addressing an issue that the Town of Indian Shores has brought to us, which is an unsafe situation on Gulf Boulevard where you have no physical separation between the two through lanes on Gulf Boulevard and the adjacent bicycle path and sidewalk, which is sort of a shared, supposed to be pervious surface. It's not pervious. There's a lot of ponding that happens. That experiment didn't really pan out the way we had hoped years ago. So the Department of Transportation has programmed about a $6 million Band-Aid, they call it, candidly, to fix some of the ponding issues on Gulf Boulevard. And that's in about a third of that is Indian Rocks Beach, and about 2/3 of that is the Town of Indian Shores. The mayor of Indian Shores approached the Department of Transportation and us a few years ago, about 2 years ago, really, with a legislative request, first to completely fix the drainage issue and build a sidewalk that's raised so that people who are walking there are safer from motorists that pass on the right when vehicles try to turn left and there's a long queue and they have to wait. I mean, this does happen. I've heard the police department down there, they've made a presentation. It's very compelling that there is a potential safety issue down there. The Department of Transportation looked into this issue in hopes that they could postpone the $6 million project now, which also has $8 million from utilities from Pinellas County to address some of the cleanup of the utilities that have been undergrounded. So there's a lot of money invested in this. And DOT thought that they could maybe take that $6 million and repurpose it to do a once-and-for-all fix for that corridor, which would probably run 15 or more millions of dollars for less than a mile. DOT came back to me and to the mayor this week and said, we can't stop that project. It's too far along, and I don't think the city of Indian Rocks Beach wants to see it stopped because they want to address some of the ponding issues too. So that project will proceed. I think they're scheduled to let that bid at the end of April. And they'll be out there for a year, working on this Band-Aid project. The mayor of Indian Shores is not happy. DOT has said that it'll probably be about a year from now before they can get another consultant to go out and take a look at what they can really do out there. And I think DOT is trying to work and get a good solution out there that's less expensive than $15 to $20 million. But they've really got to kind of get into it and do a full-on engineering design. The reason I bring this to you all is that we're probably going to need to put this on our priority list if we want DOT to find the money in the next few years to address this potential safety issue and drainage issue out there. And it's a lot of money for one project. So I just want you to be aware. I've spoken to the mayor of Indian Shores and have invited him to come and make a presentation to the board in advance of adopting our priorities so you can hear his perspective. And I think it's a good perspective. And then I'd like to have Richard Moss of DOT here also to talk about what they're looking at and the timeline that they envision. But it's, you got 40 feet of right-of-way. You got a lot of users out there. You run the risk of impacting the adjacent businesses if you aren't really careful. And so the town thinks they can get easements for the sidewalk, voluntary easements for the sidewalk, but that sometimes doesn't pan out as you hope. So it's a tricky little issue, and I just wanted you to be aware that we're working through it as best we can. But right now we've got an unhappy mayor, and we've got the DOT committed to figuring out what they can do as the best solution.
The $8 million that they're talking about doing is the Band-Aid?
Yeah, it's $6 million actually of DOT money, and then it's $8 million that the county has contributed for the utility relocation, is my understanding.
So is any of that $6 million, the relocation piece, I would imagine, is not wasted money. Is the $6 million potentially being I don't mean misspent in terms of, not doing it correctly or above board, but is waiting a better option there, and should we be pushing that?
That's what the mayor is pushing, and DOT is not willing to postpone that project. I don't think it's all wasted. I think that a lot of that can be preserved. That's my understanding from the meeting we had. But it addresses about 30% of the ponding issues, so it's not a complete fix on the corridor. So I don't think it's good money that's going to be just thrown away. I think that some of that will probably have to be redone, but not all of the $6 million.
I would certainly hope so. That'd be a terrible way to spend $6 million.
This project originally was slated to be funded before the recession at a much higher level, and for whatever reason,
They didn't do it.
Things didn't happen. Yeah. And so now we're back with not anything really have happened for 15 years. This dates to the 1990s, actually.
So what would be the time frame if they're going to do that construction, say this summer, if they waited and did the larger, what are you talking, 3-4 years?
We're talking putting it in our work program, and it might not be till 2024.
So 4 or 5.
Although I think they're going to try and see if they can do it sooner. The department is also looking at, we've got design standards for state roads. This doesn't really operate like a state road, doesn't really act like a state road. Are there some areas of flexibility where the design can be more like a local road, which would lower the cost. So they're trying to find some creative ways to address it. But
They'll do that in that second phase.
that would be the second phase.
Yes.
Is the flooding and drainage, is that happening during wet weather events?
Yes, which are happening a lot more often, too.
Right. You saw where I was going with that. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, we would like to have a solution out there because that's one of the vulnerable roadways that we've identified in our hazards work that Rodney has been leading.
Mr. Seal?
Well, this is what happens when you've been around for a long time. I remember the project, and I remember many of us at the table saying that this was going to be problematic, putting vaults on a near sand, and that it was going to clog up, and it was going to just be a maintenance nightmare. And they proceeded anyway. I recognize it's a past administration, but it seems to me that you figure it out and you improve it and move it forward. When warnings were made at the very onset of this project, but the engineers went ahead and did it anyway. So
when you say
I'm not trying to be.
Are you talking about the county or the cities?
I'm talking about
DOT.
DOT.
Oh.
And I'm saying nobody there was probably there at the time, but it was an error in the way that it was constructed, and so unless this fix that we're doing at $14 million is going to be the long-term fix, I think it's a waste of money.
No.
I mean, you either do it right. I mean, taxpayers are going to go, what? You fixed it, and then now you're going to come back and fix it again? They're already doing undergrounding in that area, and then going back and then doing this project, and
That's why I asked the question. I agree with you. I am a little concerned about it.
You're making the mayor's point.
Well, on top of that, it just keeps construction constantly going on in these areas. I mean, we hear that on, Park Boulevard, Starkey Road, 102nd. It's just constant.
Yeah. Well, people just don't like to see it dug up and then
Dug
a
up
year
again.
later being dug up again. And so I just think we really should be focused on getting the right fix done at the right price at the right time.
I agree.
We can ask the department to address this at our April meeting, if you'd like that.
Are you okay with that, Mayor?
No, to Mayor Pat, I mean, we met with him, 4 times, and I asked the secretary, Glenn, I called him up and asked him if he would come to the meeting, because I said, this is, exactly what you said. I remember the drainage issue, and that they said it was going to be this great fix, and then all of a sudden it's there, and it's not a fix at all. There's water everywhere. And in Mayor Pat's behalf, he doesn't want in other words, do we have to wait till somebody gets killed or injured severely on this one patch of property, of Gulf Boulevard before we really do something? And so they did come back with some solutions, and we 4 times we've met with them. So, but on the other side of that, Indian Rocks Beach, we're in the process of doing the undergrounding, so that it's all together, and that's why they're doing it, and we've already started. So, I mean, our undergrounding has to go on, and I think that's why FDOT said that, that part has to happen.
They've already mobilized.
Yeah, it's already mobilized. I mean,
even
they're already
if you cancel
working.
the project, you're not getting $6 million back.
No.
It's more like maybe 4 or 4.5 is what I understood. So, and DOT...
Where have they mobilized it?
Indian Rocks
They're
Beach.
already out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they're doing the undergrounding?
Yes.
But they're not doing the drainage?
No.
No, I don't think they're doing
Not
that.
yet.
That's decided separate at this point. I'm saying if we're going to fix the drainage on Gulf Boulevard, then do it once and do it right.
I may be wrong, but I think that that's part of that whole project. And that the crew is out there for the undergrounding is also constructing the drainage.
Let's ask the questions if we could.
Yeah, maybe we could have them talk to that next month.
Jensen, can we make a note of that and have maybe Richard have him here next month? Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, so I just want I knew that would be tough to get through, but I wanted to bring that to your attention.
It's just one of those.
The Kennedy report on transit funding is the next one. Well, I just spotlight, I'll stay with that for a minute. Our consultant, WRT, made a presentation to the Largo City Commission workshop yesterday, and I think that seemed to go really well. They are available as needed to make presentations to the 4 funding local government partners, but we are looking at May to have a recommendation on that, which will include the intermodal center that we talked about and other associated infrastructure. So May, June timeframe, but we'll work on that and have that back to you soon. And then for US 19, we have begun work with the department on the scoping of the frontage roads retrofit analysis, again, for lack of a better term, but just a reminder, the department has in the work program budgeted, I believe, about $400,000 for this retrofit analysis that would begin after July 1 to look at the existing frontage roads to how to make them safer and more accommodating and supportive of adjacent redevelopment. And so we started that scoping. We're going to engage the county and the cities along the way as well in the scoping of that project, and with the hopes of having that started sometime as soon as possible after July 1. On to the Kennedy report for transit funding. Commissioner Long mentioned this earlier, that we are working with PSTA and the county administrator. We have a meeting scheduled on March 26th to present a prioritized list of corridors for potential investment by the county for consideration. We'll get feedback on that, and then whatever modifications we need to make, that'll then be advanced on to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration. So I'm pleased with the direction that that's going. What we're really looking at, though, is making sure that we're serving workforce, job training opportunities for residents who are in our county today who are maybe disadvantaged or don't have access and need transportation options. So that entails a lot of mapping and analysis. And then we're going to have some very specific cost estimates for what that service will entail. In addition to that, we're combining that focus with regional connections that we know will need some infusion of dollars beyond PSTA's current means if we want to have those regional connections happen. And what we're going to try and do is look primarily at those services that would be most eligible for assistance through federal and state funding partnerships, or TBARTA. I mean, so anybody's fair game at that level. So stay tuned on that. The last item I want to just highlight quickly, actually two. Before I get to the Legislative Committee, I want to draw attention to, in your packet, you have a letter from the Citizens Advisory Committee. Is Karen Mullins here today? Our chair's not here, but the Citizens Advisory Committee at their last meeting, it's a great group. They wanted to send a message that they support the goals of Vision Zero, safety, and complete streets in advance of the St. Petersburg City Council Committee of the Whole meeting at the end of March to just encourage all the local governments in Pinellas County to stand strong in the face of opposition when there's challenges to safety projects, complete streets, and transit investments in the community. So you have that letter from the CAC. On the Legislative Committee, we talked about a lot of bills moving through the legislature and the challenges to home rule, almost in every one of the bills. The urban agriculture bill that we've been working on in partnership with the city of St. Petersburg appears to be dead this session because of a lack of sponsorship and the Farm Bureau not willing to consider any changes to the right to farm law. So we're hopeful that maybe next session we'll find a sponsor early and can make the case better before session gets going. The other thing I'd like to highlight for you in there, without going into a ton of detail, but the Legislative Committee authorized me to send a letter on behalf of Ford Pinellas to our legislative delegation, just reminding them that we are working really well with our regional partners in an unprecedented way, and we do have a strong list of transportation plans and priorities in place in Pinellas County. And it's really just up to the legislature to help us find the funding for those projects. So that was in response to the Bay Area Legislative Delegation meeting that happened with little to no notice a couple of weeks ago where essentially MPOs were thrown under the bus by the legislative delegation, and I just, even though I've met with them, I think it's important to send a reminder that we, in this county, have our act together. We are thinking regionally. We are working well with Hillsborough on a number of things, and we're certainly working well with DOT to advance regional projects. And, we're not always going to agree on everything, but that's true in any region, regardless of your governance structure. And I just think that message is important to send. And Chair, I don't know if you want to say anything.
No, I think the only thing, we were talking extensively about that, and just, I think that there's a lot of noise going on in Tallahassee all the time, and perhaps that many of them get distracted, and many of them don't understand the message or don't remember the message that we gave them. And so I think I kind of look at it as an opportunity maybe to do maybe a better job of drilling that home about what the MPO actually does and what we're doing, whether it's verbal but also followed up with something, a nice piece that kind of summarizes what we're doing. Because I think really when it's all said and done that these folks are if they knew and it was at their tip of their memory, they probably wouldn't have said some of the things that they said. Well, I certainly hope that they wouldn't say some of the things that they said. And perhaps some of it got baited a little bit by other elements that were talking in their ear differently. So I just think we have a good message, and I think we need to be a little bit more proactive and a little stronger and crisper and cleaner. And I think we do, I think we might avert some of it. I know you meet with them or you try to meet with them. I think a continued
There's always more we can
presence,
do. Yes.
monthly, give them something that tells them what we're doing. I think it's always helpful. But
I think our chairman, you're a very nice person to say that. I don't agree with you, though. Say that. I think
so you think they do get the message?
I think they get the message, and
ignoring
I
it?
think that yes, I could be wrong.
Maybe I'm facetious or not.
No, you're very nice.
No,
Naive is
naive
the
is the word I was looking for. Yeah, but.
Hopeful.
Well, and here's the scoop. Hopefully you're going to be right, because we're going to use the message and just repeat to them where we're coming from. We'll see how that works.
Well, I just think it's going to be important for us to explain how irresponsible that is if they are being that way. Because we really are trying to not only move a regional message, but also we're trying to get the business community on board with us. And so it's not easy. We have anyway.
I think there are legitimate concerns that we're a fragmented region sometimes, but sometimes that fragmentation is happening on purpose and not by the MPOs. So I'll just leave it at that. And I think I'm proud of the work you all do as a board. I'm proud of the work our staff does and our committees do, and I think we need to probably do a better job of conveying that message. And, I don't think this MPO had a lot of history of being very engaged with the legislature before I got here. I'm not exactly sure what level of engagement I need to have, but I'm hearing from you all that you'd like to make sure we are engaged and that you probably can't communicate enough in this regard. So
I think that's a better way of saying what I tried to say.
No, that's fine. Thank you. That's all I have on director's report. There are some informational items, Chairman, if I can just go through and highlight a few. There's some background information on informational items, but I really want to draw your attention to item 9, which is upcoming events. Rodney gave a nice presentation on the cultural quarter. We do have a meeting coming up on March 26th at Creative Pinellas. The arts community and our stakeholders are going to be there to really look at the results of Phase 1 and set a direction for our Phase 2 effort. We have this new group called the Tampa Bay Mobility Alliance that has their first post-launch meeting on March 27th, and that's over in Tampa. You have a link there in your packet. And then April 4th, we have a pretty important meeting for our 34th Street South lane repurposing project. Just a reminder, we've gone through the analysis with the Department of Transportation to determine that a lane elimination is what they call it, but we'd like to consider repurposing for transit, that is feasible based on the traffic volumes and other factors down there. One of the things we have to do to check that box is to have a workshop. So that'll be at the Allstate Center. The Skyway Marina District and the neighborhoods around that corridor have been big supporters of this effort, and the Florida Department of Transportation has funded our Complete Streets request to have wide sidewalks as part of the resurfacing job. So that, stay tuned to that. We are looking at potential bus rapid transit or business access transit lanes in that corridor from about 26th Avenue South to 54th Avenue South, at least as a start of that project. And that is a corridor that does serve a lot of lower income residents and connects them directly to St. Pete College, Pinellas Tech, and jobs in the Carolina area. And then after that, we have a TMA leadership group meeting, the MPOAC Weekend Institute, which is great if you've never been through that, and then our Gulf Coast Safe Street Summits later in the year.
And I would just bring some attention to, again, I think we always talk about the fatalities map and the biweekly traffic fatalities report. I think it's always so sobering that these aren't just numbers, they're actual people. I think FDOT does a great job of kind of personalizing what one of our major missions is, so I really appreciate that effort. The Pinellas Trail data count, I was looking at that and I'm thinking, do we really have markers or places to do traffic counts?
Yes, we do.
Wow.
We have new technology. It's camera-based technology, and we're seeing a lot higher numbers because of the accuracy of this method than what we previously did, which was spot counting in different locations.
I was looking, I thought, well, Dunedin's is pretty high. I figured the mayor must have found out where the counter was and was going back and forth to get me. I'm kidding. Just kidding, Mayor. But anyway, it was some interesting stuff there. So, and then...
She's not having it.
Hello.
That's why I look like I walk a lot.
All right.
I think you're on your golf cart on the trail. That's what I think.
Go.
Back and forth. That's what I think.
More likely so.
Wow, that was quite, yeah.
Sing
Well, I
it
guess
back.
no. I don't do that, and I'm sure,
I
sure
know,
you don't
and I'm
either.
sorry. I'm just teasing you.
I know you are. And then I just wanted to mention our committee vacancies. The CAC has one opening for Pinellas Park in Mid-County, and the LCB has two openings, one for a citizen who's a TD writer and one for a public education representative. So if we could do our job to try to fill those. And with that, did you have anything else?
Just one last thing that I meant to mention. I just want to thank our staff and the City of Largo for our Bike Your City effort that happened this past Saturday. We had about 65 people who came out to Largo Central Park, and we rode to the Southwest Recreational Complex, led by sheriff's deputies who were great. They were phenomenal. Sue Miller did a fantastic job organizing that. It was a nice day for a bike ride, and that's the third one we've done in a row. We did Clearwater, St. Pete Beach, Largo. So we're taking proposals and calls and requests for where we go and do it next year in partnership with Florida Bike Month.
Okay, great. Anybody else that has anything for the good of the order? Anything? We are at 2:34. It seems awfully early to quit. But if there's nothing else, we have, I'm sure, other things we can involve ourselves in.
We'll make up for it next month.
Yeah. This meeting's adjourned.